All right, this is We the People News. Not an attorney, not giving legal advice. Never look straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Use the Second Amendment. Arm yourself with knowledge. All righty. And this is educational, okay? Um think outside the box, people. Everything you hear around us is hearsay. Judges, attorneys, these people, me, everybody. Everybody's hearsay. Do your own research, okay? The responsibility falls on your hands. All right. I'm going to play this at the very end because he actually gives a web channel. I didn't write it down to his website. All right. If you want to check into it. Now, that being said, I seen this video 8 days ago and all that kind of stuff. It was an awesome video, the whole thing. So go to Breaking News Now, which is all in caps, and check him out. Okay, which is actually this guy over here. Okay, this is guys finding out the corruption here in Texas, which is every state, by the way. Um, one corruption in any county is corrupted to all counties. They all follow the same guidelines. Okay, can't think of his name, but he's actually an attorney, and I've seen him on some other things I just cannot recall. But what I've seen him on, I recognize him, and he's good. Okay, all right. Let's go with that, and then I'll rewind it back where we began. Roughly. I hate to say it, I had to rewind it on this to go back because I don't have fancy cameras. I don't have fancy equipment. I got a PVC pipe. I'm in my bedroom filming on my TV with my cheap cell phone.
When we get offline here, I'll connect you guys via email. So, Mitch, if you have any questions, or Robert, if you have any feedback, you guys can just communicate, and hopefully, the power of the community will help you have higher odds of tackling this problem and coming out victorious. But like I said, at the very least, you're getting the word out and opening up people's eyes, and that in and of itself is a big win, in my view.
Absolutely, and I just want to thank both of you, and I'm truly honored. It's Robert, I'd like to get you those 10 pages of all those laws being broken, because you'll see how all this stuff ties together. But it's,
sure.
Like I said, I'm quite honored. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mitch, one more time, can you give us your website, please?
Yes, it's mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD.
Okay, fantastic. All right, guys.
Alrighty, so let's run that back. I got a rough idea where it was at. No. This is roughly where it was at.
You get them the comparisons from your own subdivision. So the point of the matter is, they have cumulatively compounded fraud at least since 2016 that we can prove. And on the overall scheme of things, therein lies the whole problem, and that's why their databases are irretrievably corrupted, and that's why you have a whole host of co-conspirators. And the people we're calling co-conspirators are those who have signed an oath, as oath of office, to protect and defend the Constitution of the state of Texas and the United States of America. They violated that oath, and under Texas Penal Code, that's a third-degree felony. So, as I keep saying,
and if I remember, if I'm correct on that, that would be the Criminal Code 39. I think I brought that up once before. But Texas is the only one that actually has that code. So if you think you're going to find it in your states, good luck. It may be in there. But my understanding, there's not very many or any other state that has it. Only state of Texas has that code.
They do not have a defense. They're caught.
Yep. So, Mitch, let me just put this in layman terms. What's happening is, according to your research, the local governments in Texas are saying, well, we need X amount of money this year. And let's just say it's $1 billion. And for us to get the $1 billion in property taxes, we have to increase the appraisal value of the overall housing stock by, let's say, 30%. And whereas obviously they're kind of reverse engineering the number they need instead of abiding by the law, which gives the appraiser a formula to use, and based on this formula, that's what the housing price or the appraisal should be, and then you're paying a percentage of that. But unfortunately, if they were being honest about it, the county or the city wouldn't get enough of these property taxes to fund the local school districts, nor would anyone buy their bonds, because let's remember that the cash flow from these property taxes is the underlying asset from a lot of these municipal bonds that are being sold. So you have this daisy chain, you have this domino effect where they got themselves painted into a corner where they said, look, we've just got to literally commit fraud on homeowners, and we've just got to increase their property values based on how much tax we need them to pay. And so, I mean, that's what's going on. That's at the heart of it here. And you think that this is being perpetrated not only in Texas, but nationwide, possibly.
Yes, we now have at least one person from 47 different states that has sent us emails and or sent us evidence. So we know that this problem is a full-blown cancer. Over and above that, it's all the way into Canada. So in Canada, the only difference is that they have what's called C. They put a C in front of it, USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. It's the exact same
formula. That's just to be clear, that's the formula. That's the algorithm that by law these appraisers are supposed to be using.
Yes, that's the totality of the formulas. It's a 384-page document, but it says these are the types of comps you're supposed to use. Here's the category. You're supposed to use standard deviation to figure out what the outliers are. They don't do any of that. So, George, to your point, the key word is predetermined budget. So,
right.
What happens is the taxing entities, there's 67 of them inside of Denton County, by way of example. They will meet with Don Spencer, the chief appraiser, and say, here's our budget. Go meet it. That's one layer of the fraud, okay? The second layer of the fraud is, in fact, what's called a property valuation study, which is the creation of the state comptroller. The property valuation study is designed to take money from one school district and ship it to another school district. Here's the problem for the state comptroller. There's no law that allows him to go to Don Spencer, the chief appraiser, and says, go increase the properties to meet my budget under the property valuation study. In other words, state comptroller has no authority whatsoever to denote what a value is on a property. Second layer of fraud. In other words, they can't get past their own documents. Literally, the first paragraph, first sentence on the Denton County website that says we adhere to USPAP is a straight up lie. They don't. None of them do. This has gotten to the point where their databases are all garbage. There's literally nothing here that's working. And when Charles Baffert stands up and says, you're the masters at guessing, that statement couldn't be any more true. That's really what's happening. These values are a pure guess to meet, to your point, a predetermined budget.
Yeah. Robert, what are your initial thoughts?
How have these cases so far reached the court, and what's been the hurdles and obstacles so far?
First of all, 50% of their case disappeared on the last judge. So the first judge in that particular court punted. She didn't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole. Before we sat down, her decision was made up. She wasn't going to hear this case, end of story. So she punted. And however, we gave her a notice and second opportunity, which was the right thing to do. And she said, okay, fine, bring it back. She wasn't in the courtroom when we brought it back. There was a sitting judge there. Interestingly enough, that guy actually read the brief. And he said, he looked at me and looked at my attorney and said, Mr. Vexler, this is a societal issue. And then he went down the rabbit trail of Chevron deference, which I'm extraordinarily familiar with because I actually wrote an amicus brief having to do with that issue. So he, on his own, it wasn't part of the conversation. Well, he turned to defense counsel and said, I hate to inform you, Mr. Metcalf, but your client, Don Spencer, is the party responsible in law. And then he went on a 15-minute lecture on behalf of my attorney, setting up his situation the way he wanted it done for my attorney to hand off to the appellate court in Fort Worth. This judge got it. And he said, this is a societal issue. Boy, did he get it. So the problem that the state of Texas has not realized yet is that every time somebody in the state of Texas punts on this case, that pushes us one step closer to the U.S. Supreme Court, because the sovereignty clause under the U.S. Supreme Court trumps anything that the state can do. And then, of course, you get into the 16th Amendment versus what the state has done, because in reality, market value, okay, is not allowed under the 16th Amendment. Tax on income is. Tax on unrealized gains is not. So
We're going to pause right there. There you go, right? So even on your private property, they're kind of making their own thing up of what the value is worth. Well, they're supposed to go by income, the profits off your private property. Well, if you're not making income on your private property and you do not have a business license, it cannot apply to your private property, people. Understand this, okay? And yes, judges are corrupt. I'm fighting mine. They're corrupt. It's going to be a battle, all right? And I suggest that web channel you guys go to, see what kind of stuff he has on there, and kind of help lead you into your directions on your private property, okay? But always just plain out, everybody has to read the tax code itself, your state tax code, okay? Now it says it's a nexus to the Social Security or the IRS, but when you get them scared in this lower level, it's a problem, because the statutes does not apply to your private property, okay? It's not of one like kind. It's separate.
well, I'd love to be able to get you the 10 pages. We'll do that afterwards, but you'll be shocked as to how far we've taken this, because we took USPAT, we tied it to the math, we tied it to the Texas Property Tax Code, we tied it to the Texas Constitution, and we tied it to the U.S. Constitution. So the answer to your question is, what have been the hurdles? Well, kind of none, because we're going to win at the appellate court, and then it gets bounced back right to where we were, to the same court that didn't want to hear it. So assuming she hears it, doesn't ignore the appellate court, all this evidence will come out. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But they don't have a defense. I mean, they've literally jumped up and said, oh, you can't touch us, this is immunity. No, that's not what the law says. I can sue the ARB members. We can sue the chief appraiser. We can sue the RPAs, registered property advisors, who have committed perjury. We can do all of that. We can file criminal complaints. In fact, I've got 12 criminal complaints sitting on my attorney's desk right now, pending getting past the appellate court. So there's all sorts of things we can and will do, but we're at the end game of this because they cannot defend their actions. They're caught. They've committed fraud.
Have you had any success approaching legislators or political elected officials or anybody on the legislative side of the aisle or the executive side of the aisle inquiring as to what's going on?
Well, there's a fellow by the name of Senator Betancourt who sits on the Texas legislature. Mr. Betancourt makes his living as a real estate tax consultant. He has zero interest in fixing this problem. At a minimum, he should have been forced to recuse himself. And there are certainly powerful people who have a benefit to ignoring this problem. Up until...
Well, if you sit and think about it, for attorneys, when you're fighting property tax, where do they want you to go? They want you to go to them, right? And then even though you don't need an attorney, the county attorneys and all that, they're all making money and they're swingling all this around. And everybody's getting a piece of the pie, which, by the way, is conflict of interest.
3.5 weeks ago, I was completely unknown. Travis Spencer reached out, and because he had heard what I was doing, so we had a conversation, and then we put a handful of videos together that have just jumped off the charts in terms of what they're doing. So not that many people know this circumstance. Its reach is somewhat limited, only because nobody even knew 3.5 weeks ago that I even existed. I've never been on social media. I didn't know jack squat about it. So I'm kind of learning little by little. But the bigger the breadth of this, like I said, there's now at least one signature from 47 different states. So the more this gets pushed out, every day that goes by, the more power we get, and there is power in numbers. So I'm hopeful that eventually the Texas legislature will have no choice but to wake up and smell the coffee, because the closer we get to the U.S. Supreme Court, the worse this gets for the state of Texas. Now, there is a circular argument there. If we actually put it into the federal court and we win, well, this is a multi-billion-dollar hit to the state of Texas. Do I expect any money? No, because the state doesn't have it, and you can't turn around to the taxpayers and go get it. Ergo, what is the end game here? The end game is to eliminate the property taxes. And because mom and pop's balance sheet has been decimated, if you eliminate the property taxes, you put the power back in mom and pop's hands, where their balance sheet in 30 years, by virtue of the principal reduction, they can retire from this, plus a little bit, call it $2,400 a year, stuck in an index fund. They'll put $900,000 in their pocket in 30 years from now. There's things that can be done. The point is, this is so far off the charts, there is no other solution, because these CADs have literally taken something that's supposed to be objective, right? USPAP is about being objective. You have to quantify what you're doing. They took something that's supposed to be objective and literally made it 100% subjective. And in the process, destroyed mom and pop's balance sheet. I mean, 37% of your population cannot afford the house, the roof over their head. And to that point, Don Spencer, under threat of perjury, stood in front of the press, stood in front of the board, and said, well, the average price of a home in Denton County is $514,000. Okay? That's mathematically impossible. He said the average price is $514,000. The median household income is $109,000. $109,000 at max can only afford a $296,000 home. The government's actual number, gross income to value, is 28%. The net result of that is that 67% of your population, total population, can't afford what Don Spencer is saying is the median value of a home. If 67% of the population can't afford it, then it's not the median or the average, is it? He's caught.
Not only that, but you keep raising these property taxes just on this subjectivity based on what the government needs. At a certain point, the people can't pay it, and they're going to have to sell those homes to extract the equity, because they can no longer afford. They might be able to afford their fixed rate mortgage, but they can't afford the maintenance. They can't afford the property taxes, especially if they're artificially, 100% higher than where they should be. They sell, and then the property values go down. And I think the bigger impact is on the pension funds, because there's a lot of financial institutions that I'm sure have these bonds on their balance sheet, where the underlying asset for those bonds, or is the cash flow coming in from these property taxes. And if that goes away, or if that declines, then you blow a hole in these pension funds, which goes right back to the average Joe and Jane. So, I mean, I'm just a layman looking at this from the...
All right, we're going to go ahead and end it there. What do you guys think? Okay. And sit and think about it. Especially since the C word came about, everybody kind of lost money, right? Well, government was no difference. And now all of a sudden, what is reason why there's a bunch of homeless people is because they've been taxed out of their homes, people, and their business been taxed out of their business. My dad used to own a mobile home company when I was a little wee one, okay? And Railroad Commission ran him out of business because he could not keep up with it, with all the regulations that they was doing. All right. So later on, it got changed and it became really good. But Just saying. You get too much regulations. Who's that actually benefit? This benefits the real rich people that keeps buying up everybody's land. Sit and think about it. Who's the one buying up all these land when people loses it? This is We the People News. Bye, y'all.